The story of Loki, goddess Idun, the apples of immortality. How Idun's golden apples were lost and stolen back, and how Loki achieved this, and what happened to him at the very end. The gods of Asgard, the Aesir and the Vanir, owe their immortality to golden apples. That every day, goddess Idun, whose role it is to tend the magical tree from which the golden apples come, offers the gods in a basket the apples from her wondrous tree. Without them, the gods come to age. So this is what happens when the apples were stolen. The story begins, as many stories do, with Odin, Thor and Heimdall crossing the Bifrost Rainbow Bridge and going down to Middle-earth, seeking adventures. They walked for many days and found that they were running very low on food, until they found, grazing on lush green grass, half a dozen oxen. It was an opportunity too good for anyone to turn up. So the three gods swiftly killed an ox, built a great fire, and began to roast the meat. And time passed, and the meat should have been cooked, and yet it was just as raw as it was first placed near the fire. So they added more wood to the fire, and yet the ox meat still wouldn't cook. From a nearby oak tree, a voice called out to them. And when Loki looked up, he realised that the voice was coming from an eagle. You will never cook that meat. Those oxen belong to me. You cannot cook their meat without my permission, which I do not wish to give you. And Loki, he was tired, hungry, and getting a bit irritable, picked up a stick and tried to hit the eagle with it. But the eagle was quicker and grasped the stick in its claws. And while Loki was still holding on to the other end of the stick, the eagle took off. So Loki found himself dangling beneath a flying eagle. Put me down, you idiot, put me down. But the eagle replied, not yet, not until I have extracted a promise from you. In my true form, I am the giant Thiazi, but I can shape-shift into being an eagle. What I require from you are Idun's magical golden apples. If you promise that you will gain them for me, I will set you down. Otherwise, Loki, I will let you fall, probably onto rocks. Loki, who felt that his arms were pulling out of their shoulder sockets, simply agreed, because he would have agreed to anything. The next day, Loki set about fulfilling his promise. He went for a walk with Idun, and wherever she walked, flowers sprang up. And Loki said, you know, Idun, it's a strange thing, but on our travels, Odin, Heimdall and I, we found an apple tree. And it was so beautiful. Do you know, I think it's the only tree I've ever seen that's even more beautiful than yours. And Idun laughed. That cannot be, Loki. You know it cannot be. My apples are the most wondrous in all the 9 worlds. But Loki said, meet me at dawn tomorrow, and I will take you to the apple tree. Bring some of your own apples and some leaves from your tree, and we can compare the two. And so it was that just after dawn the following day, Loki and Idun left Asgard and walked over Bifrost Bridge to Middle-earth. And of course, there was no such apple tree. And Loki really was taking Idun to the prearranged place where he would meet Thiazi, who was still in his eagle form. Thiazi, as an eagle, swooped down, picked up Idun, still carrying her box of golden apples, and flew with her off to his castle. But the gods swiftly realised that Idun was missing, for without the apples they began to age. Their hair became grey. Their hearing wasn't as sharp as it had been. Their eyesight began to fade. They found themselves with terrible cravings for Werther's originals. The air wasn't as clear as it used to be. It was more difficult to breathe. The gods called a council. And it was Odin, always the wise one, who said, Idun was last seen in the company of Loki. So it seems to us, Loki, that it is your fault. Idun is missing. So it is your responsibility to bring her back. Loki, of course, as blood brother to All-Father Odin, could only respect his wishes. And of course, he needed Idun's golden apples to be returned as much as any of the rest of the gods did. So Loki went to Freya, the twin sister of Frey, usually described as goddess of love, and borrowed from her Falcon Cloak. And wrapping the cloak around himself, he could fly like a falcon and flew fast to Thiazi's castle. Luckily for him, Thiazi was out at sea fishing, and Loki swiftly found Idun, and he changed her into a nut, so he could hold the nut between his claws, and flew as fast as a falcon can fly back to Asgard. But of course, Thiazi saw him and swiftly shapeshift into his eagle form again. And of course, an eagle, the emperor of the birds, can fly very fast too. The gods had built a great fire behind the walls of Asgard, which they lit when they saw the 2 birds approaching. And Loki, as a falcon, could fly high and fly fast and fly above the flames. But an eagle isn't as manoeuvrable as a falcon. So Thiazi found himself caught in the flames, and thus he perished. So Idun was swiftly transformed from a little nut to her own goddess form, and all was well, except that Thiazi had a daughter named Sculdy, who wished to exact revenge on on the Vanir. A giant's daughter, a giantess. She marched to Asgard, wearing a war helmet and mail, brandishing a sword. She demanded payment for her father's life. And in many respects, the gods agreed with her. Odin took Thiazi's eyes and threw them into the sky, where they became 2 new stars. But Sculdy wanted more than this. She wanted to marry a god. Not just any god, but Balder. Balder the Beautiful, Frigg's beloved son, husband of Nan. Balder, the sun god. The gods suggested that Sculdy could indeed marry any of the unmarried gods, and she would get to choose, but she would choose only by looking at their feet. So a screen was erected so that the gods themselves were not visible, just their feet. So Sculdy went from one pair of feet to the next and the next, until she found a pair of feet that looked to her so clean, so fresh, and so lovely that they must belong to Balder the Beautiful. But when the screen was taken away, Sculdy found that she was betrothed to Njord, the god of the sea. And they were married for less than a year. Sculdy couldn't bear living near the sea, and Njord couldn't bear living in the mountains, but I think they parted on good terms. But there's one little ending to this story which is seldom told, because, let me tell you, it involves the word testicles. So if you're faint-hearted, maybe just switch off now. Another part of the agreement with Sculdy, and this is something that turns up in a lot of stories, was that the gods had to make her laugh. And of course Sculdy, for whom life up until then hadn't really been particularly joyful, had very little to laugh about. So it wasn't something that she did easily. So Loki, considerable sacrifice to himself, found a nanny goat with a long beard and a piece of rope. And he tied one end of the rope to the nanny goat's beard. And standing naked, he tied the other piece of the rope to his own testicles. And as the nanny goat pulls back against the rope, so did Loki. And the sight of the goat pulling at Loki, and Loki pulling at the goat, and all of this affecting his testicle, of course, made even Sculdy laugh. So I think that's a story with a happy ending, really, because the gods retained their magical golden apples. And Sculdy learnt to laugh, which is, of course, a wonderful thing. So please, if you're a storyteller, tell happy stories. And I hope you enjoyed this story. And I hope that the idea of the idea of Loki and the nanny goat gave you cause to laugh. My name is Fiona. I'm on YouTube under my own name, Fiona Dawson. I have lots of stories and gradually working my way through the Norse stories. So please do subscribe and please do watch some of the other videos, because the Norse, the Vikings, had a sense of humour that I think we would recognise. It's really not all it's not all warships and killing people. There's space for making someone laugh too. So hope to see you again.